All right, so I'm gonna get started.
Yeah.
Now that we have some attendees here. Uh, my name's Imran Khan. I'm the founder of the News Run. It's an email newsletter that provides smart, clear, and concise breakdowns of Pakistan's top news. And I've also dropped a link to the website here in the chat for people who aren't familiar with the News Run and would like to click around and learn more about it. And I want to welcome our awesome speakers who are here with us today. We have Pakistani student leaders who are in the US and England and Pakistan. And it's nice to see that we're spanning the globe here and that Zoom is able to help us connect across, I think, about 4 different time zones. So I'm on West Coast time, then we have GMT, East Coast, and then Pakistan time as well. So that's really great to see. And we're really looking forward to hearing our panelists' insights on today's topic, which is Pakistan's relationship with its unsung heroes. And we chose this topic because it ties into a section of the news run called The Good Stuff. And for those of you who haven't subscribed yet, we end each newsletter from Monday to Thursday with a segment that highlights positive news about Pakistan and features talented Pakistanis from around the world who are doing innovative work and making an impact. And we want to use our platform to celebrate their achievements. So now I want to turn it over to our speakers to briefly introduce themselves. Guys, it would be great if you could just quickly tell us what your major is or what you're studying at school, where you're currently living, what interests you have outside of school that you would like to share, and how you first learned about the news run. And anybody can start.
Okay, I'll start. So I'm Sadia and I currently study at LSE. So I'm doing a law degree and I'm currently in my 3rd year. So my last year before the LPC or the bar, I haven't quite chosen yet. But I currently live in London, but I'm just outside of Multan in Pakistan. In terms of my interests outside of school, I probably shamelessly plug my YouTube channel here. So I actually sing Desi songs on YouTube. So you can subscribe if you want to. Sadia Sajid. And then where I first learnt about Newsrun was actually from the first webinar. So I just came across it on Facebook and I just really, really enjoyed the insights that the people from like Harvard and Yale had. And I just thought it would be a really great thing to get involved in.
That's great, Sadia. And also just drop a link to your YouTube channel here.
Sure.
Yeah, just so people can take a look at it. Okay, and who wants to go next?
Okay, so I'm happy to go next. I'm Fiza Raza. I am doing my sociology PhD from Texas A&M University. I'm originally from Lahore, Pakistan. I've spent most of time in Lahore, and then I did my bachelor's from there in economics from LUMS. Then I moved on to London, LSE for masters. Did a little bit of research work in Pakistan, and now I'm finally in US for my PhD. How did I come across the news run was I am currently serving as the public relations for Pakistani Student Association at Texas A&M University. And while, just like moving around the social media was the time when I actually ran into the news run. And now we are following news run socially on all of our forums. And it is a very interesting newsletter as well. I keep on having a look at what's going on. So that's pretty much. I do not have a YouTube channel, but what I really like to do is talk about social issues. And those are the things that I really follow up on social media as well. So I guess the news run was actually a treat for myself when I got to see. I was like, wow. So this is something you just get to have the abridged version of all the news that's happening back home in Pakistan. So that is pretty much.
That's great feedback. Thank you for that.
I can go next.
Anzu?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for introducing yourselves. And firstly, officially, I would want to thank the Newsrun for inviting me over here. I am Anjal Abbas Jafri. I am a final year student studying social development and policy at Habib University. My university is located in the center of Karachi. Karachi, if you may know, is Pakistan's biggest cosmopolitan city. As far as me getting to know about Newsrun, well, I was officially informed through our university because I also serve as the president of Habib University student government. And when we were elected in student government, one of our goals was to advocate for student issues, and not only advocate for student issues, but also help the students of Habib University lead discourses and also, participate in them. So Newsrun has provided us this opportunity, and our university administration reached out to us, and that is when I got to know about Newsrun. So it is an honor to be here. Thank you for arranging this.
And thank you, all of you. It's an honor for us that you're also here today, taking out the time to speak. And just before we get started, I want to let our attendees know that if they have any questions, they can write them in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to answer them near the end of the event. We'll try to take out at least 10 minutes. And so last time we had a lot of engagement with our questions, but we unfortunately couldn't get to all of them, but really looking forward to hearing what our attendees have to say as well. And now with that, I want to start off our discussion with a quote from a very special person. She was the first woman war pilot of the Pakistan Air Force, Aisha Farooqi. And in an interview with Tribune, she talked about a pilot who taught and inspired her. And when talking about him, she said, "He taught me to touch the skies." And then after her, Mariam Mukhtiar, who died in a plane crash in 2015, tragically, she said, "I believe people will appreciate what I'm doing and they'll send their sisters and daughters to become fighter pilots." And as a young Pakistani, what does a hero mean to you? And why do you think it's important for a healthy, vibrant society to have heroes to look up to? And we won't go in specific order, but anybody who wants to start can answer the question first.
Shall I start?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll deal with the first question first. So what does a hero signify for you? I think especially in a Pakistani Eastern context, I think a hero is someone who sort of breaks stereotypes or accepted norms, obviously in a positive way. And I think in today's society, and this is not just like exclusive to the East, like there are numerous barriers to be broken, whether it be stuff to do with gender, stuff to do with race or religion, and somebody who sort of strives towards that, albeit like obstacles along the way, definitely outshines others and stands out for me as a hero. Because I think specific to Pakistan and these countries, there's sort of a culture of backlash when heroes like this occur or stand out for whatever reason, perhaps for the reasons that I've mentioned, which might be a little bit controversial per se. And so I think that's what a hero signifies to me. And I guess I'll deal with the second question as well, which was the importance of having heroes. And I sort of thought about this, and I thought what's important here is the consequences of not having heroes. And I think, and that shines a light on why it's important to have them. And I think because people currently are very afraid to sort of transgress, or they have to go abroad to have what are termed outlandish opinions, or they don't feel welcome to pursue their interests or further their causes, like in Pakistan, for example, and then we lose Pakistanis who we should be celebrating and risk them diluting their Pakistani identity from a lack of belonging and feeling like an outcast. So I think the importance then is that it gives the country a sense of direction and path to follow or work towards or push further from. And I just think it's a story for the younger generation to set as their benchmark and then work above that. So that's the sort of why I think it's important to have them there.
That's a great way to set the stage for the deep dive we're going to go into after this. So thanks for that, Sadia. And anyone else? Anzal?
I can go if Fiza is okay with it.
Sure, go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Thank you, Sadia, for introducing us to this very important topic. Most importantly, if you ask any layman in Pakistan, and why am I starting off with this, I'll tell later, that who is a hero, or what is the importance of a hero. At a very simple level, if we tone down the discourse, at a simple level, it inspires people. So let's take the example of cricket in Pakistan, or even cricket in India, for that sake. Now, cricket is something which unites the country across the borders, India and Pakistan both. And why am I using the example of India is because it is very much relatable to Pakistan. And over there, it is an interesting thing to imagine, because India has traditionally produced a lot of batsmen, and they continue to produce amazing batsmen. Whereas Pakistan continue to produce amazing bowlers. And it's not that there are people who have been good bowlers in India and good batsmen in Pakistan, but the important point to note is that there's a tradition of heroes which continue to inspire millions of people in Pakistan and India. So India will always have batsmen because they have Sachin to look forward to, they have Virat to look forward to. Whereas in Pakistan, they will always have someone to look forward to, and that is the importance of heroes. And it's not only in cricket. This continues to transpire in other fields also, in other professions also. And But now let's just answer the second question. And specifically, I would want to ask a question and pose this question to the community: who's hero? Because in diverse communities where people have their own opinions, everyone has a different hero. A radical person on the right wing who have spread hate throughout is a hero to millions of Pakistanis. So we need to differentiate who's heroes, and how do we differentiate whose hero is to be considered a national hero. Well, for that you need to help, and this is the process which needs to continue from both the right and left of Pakistan. And that is, you need to help give voice to local communities. We had an election in Gilgit Baltistan recently. All national parties were campaigning, but there was very little voice for the local communities in Gilgit Baltistan. They had their own heroes. There's very little voice in local communities of rural Sindh, Balochistan. They have their own heroes. Right now, or in a country like Pakistan, the problem has been that the national discourse is dominated by national institutions. So the conceived heroes or the perceived heroes are actually the heroes of the national institutions, which is fine. There is no harm in it. However, we need to allow, and we need to use these platforms like Newsrun to give voice to local communities. Let's call someone from rural Sindh and ask them, who's your hero? He or she might call someone who you don't even know, who we don't even know in our national media. And that is very important. That can come from, and that truly transpires from a good democratic society, not at the national level only, but also at the local level, where you give other people chance to speak. And that is where you will get to know other people's stories, and the tradition, the culture of those people continue to inspire millions. There are a lot of heroes in Pakistan, but the national media and the national institution, their monopoly on the discourse, it doesn't let us identify them. So that are my 2 cents.
That's a really good point. I really love how this discussion is being framed, like just starting with the first prompt. And I agree, Anzal. And one thing I really do want the news run to do is to find these hidden gems. I think that's what you're referring to. Regular people who are making a significant impact, but they're just not in the spotlight because they're not, I guess, what people in Pakistan would consider like a celebrity or famous. but there's still important people who are doing great work. And Fiza, wanna?
Sure. So just building upon what you and Ansel has just talked about is actually I have a combined answer for both of the questions that you have talked about. The first one being, so who is a hero? So I think Ansel has really put up very beautifully when he's talking about somebody we might not have any idea about, and that person could be a hero for someone. And this is exactly what I feel what heroes should be. We should not think of heroes as somebody who's larger than life, who is somebody we cannot relate to, or like as a general public or masses cannot relate to. But a hero should be someone with whose struggles are somehow comparable to an everyday person, to a common man who can identify themselves with. So I just really think that this is the concept of hero that maybe we can start building upon. And if we just start thinking about heroes with this definition, that might actually help us have more heroes in our own society as well. And then just like talking about this, when we talk about who is a hero in like a broader concept, so I think Iqbal has really beautifully summed it up, and I guess all of us have grown up listening to this a few verses before the 9 p.m. news broadcast on PTV. And he says that अफराद के हाथों में है कौम की तकदीर, हर फर्द है मिल्लत की मुकद्दर का सितारा. So I think when he's talking about हर फर्द है मिल्लत की मुकद्दर का सितारा, so he's just putting it up so beautifully that every person, every ordinary person, every common man has the ability to shine high in the skies. And this is exactly what we all need to think about, even our own selves, to work as an inspiration for everybody. It's not like we are going to conquer skies or something, but just like, thinking big, having that mission, like, okay, like just look around yourselves and you will see so many people who are doing such inspirational work in their fields, and you get to have inspirations for them. Of course, they are like the national heroes and we all love to celebrate them, but just like, looking around your own selves and then just being a part of that circle and try to build upon yourself and work upon yourself and think of setting up yourself as an example for other people is something I just feel what signifies a hero to be.
Not absolutely. And this is, and I guess one thing I'll try to not take too long here, but one thing that I've also noticed is that there are, for example, cricket players, like some heroes who people consider heroes who are in the spotlight, who are considered celebrities. Like if they're doing well, like for instance, if they win a game, then they are celebrated. But then if, for instance, our cricket team loses one match or doesn't play well, like I don't know if you've noticed that they get demolished on social media. So now I guess I'm just thinking about, and I'm thinking this to myself, like it's great to praise our heroes, but I also think, and this also ties into one of our next prompts, it's also important to like be a little kinder to them if they don't always win or if they don't always succeed, just to, help keep them motivated in the long run. But now I'm gonna go on to our next question, which actually ties into a statement that Anzal also made. Historically, Pakistan has had a complicated relationship with its heroes, and that's something that you've all touched on. And they've either been adored or subjected to criticism and suspicion. So, why do you think we as a nation have a hard time putting aside our own differences and opinions to celebrate our own talent? And do you think many people in Pakistan have the tendency to celebrate those who are, in a way, holding us back and keeping us from progressing as a society? For example, religious extremists. And anyone can take this on first.
Okay, so I just feel like there are so many things that I would want to talk to about this. I would like want to go first and like make sure that I have enough time left for other people's to add their ideas to it. So what is one thing that does not actually help us celebrate our heroes? I just feel like there could be a couple of reasons, and like there is like it might not be even safe to make up like say that okay, this is one reason that might not be making up it making it like making it easier for us to celebrate our heroes. But I feel like that a lack of tolerance and patience and just a lack of the ability to accept diversity in ourselves. And this is something that I think we suffer on our individual levels, at our family levels, as a community as a whole. And this is something I would say, maybe because of the fact that while growing up, we have not been exposed to much of the diverse populations around ourselves. So Pakistan, I mean, that's like a fact, like 98% of 97% of the population is Muslims. And then I guess the larger population comes from the Sunni religious school of thought. So like that makes it like a more homogeneous group. So just the fact that we, as as individuals, we have not been exposed to those diverse systems. And then if we see somebody from a very different community, somebody who might have different religious background, or somebody from a different ethnicity as well, for per se, that person comes up and do something brilliant, so that makes it difficult for us to accept them, because we expect everybody to just look like us, to follow the same religious and political beliefs that we have been told are the correct ones. So just the idea of, okay, there could be different people, and being different does not mean bad always. Being different does talk about bringing up more variety and more options and more range in a room of people. But that is something I believe has actually made it difficult for us to, celebrate our heroes as well, because at times they might not come from the most popular religious group, and that is why they might get a lot of criticism as well. So I just feel like that lack of tolerance and just the lack of ability to celebrate diversity is something that at times makes it difficult for us to celebrate the people.
That's a really interesting perspective. So just to try and sum up what you said, you you think that the complicated relationship Pakistan has with its heroes originates from an inability to accept differences, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like, to sum it up in a one line is something I do feel like it is the lack of ability to cherish that diversity that my people might have to offer.
Okay. And does anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a sort of general tendency or habit of sort of stating your viewpoints and asserting them from like a place of superiority and then dismissing the opposition. Like, I guess we've all seen, AOI news and the debates that go on there, and just sort of like talking over each other without sort of listening to what the other side has to say. And obviously I love AOI news, but that's just like it's just crazy. And I think it's ingrained in our culture to sort of be critical. But I think also what's worth mentioning here is really important is that people in Pakistan is like live sheltered lives. Not everyone, but especially in rural areas. So for example, like I live in a small town just outside of Multan, and when I went back in September, a lot of people in my family even aren't exposed to other ways of thinking or other ways of living, and they live pretty conservative lives as well, which is respectable, obviously, in the place that they're living in. So, and also there are literally areas in Pakistan which are occupied only by certain religious sects. And I think that factionalism obviously runs throughout Islam, and especially in terms of religious sects, obviously, which spur like further unacceptance from or between them. So I think that's like a reason why like a lot of people sort of dismiss opinions from each other. Like you saw with I think it was like an Ahmadi man who was killed, and it was literally celebrated on the streets of Pakistan. And I remember thinking, like, what the hell is going on? Because these Sunni men, obviously I'm Sunni as well, but these Sunni men were literally parading the streets, celebrating the death of this man just because he's Ahmadi. So I think there's a lot of unacceptance there on those lines. But I think also there's a conventional way of behaving in Pakistani culture, and I think our values are very firm, and I love Pakistani values, but they are very firm, and our culture is somewhat exclusive. So someone who is different to that might be frowned upon for that very reason. And I just think that, yeah, there are so many different ways of thinking and living that just aren't exposed to the general community, at least where I'm from in Pakistan.
No, that does tie into the point of how sometimes there are negative activities or events that are celebrated in Pakistan, not just people, but like the people who are actually encouraging that negativity, they do receive praise. And it's interesting that you've all noticed that as well, like even while living abroad. Anzal?
Thank you. So I think points very well raised. As a student of sociology, I would, directly ask and pose two questions. Number one, uh, how are nations constructed? And generally, I think, yes, of course, our discussion is specific to Pakistan, but all this discussion can come into context very nicely when you start studying the nation building process. Now, the nation building process, in essence, excludes people and pushes some sections of the society to peripheries. In Pakistan, it would be Ahmadis. In Pakistan, it would be Shias. In Pakistan, the majority of the suppression and persecution comes against women. And we have quite convincingly ignored the significant majority of women in Pakistan, and heroes constructing out of them. If you go and find a problem, the problem will directly lead you to the first question, and that is, how was a nation constructed? How was the ideology of a nation constructed? Again, we need to come back to square one and ask, who's hero? Who is actually leading the discourse? Who is actually dominating the discourse? Who actually appropriates heroes in Pakistan? And we need to ask, and because from this discussion we can ask an even more nuanced question, which is an even more nuanced problem. Okay, even if you find a hero, who will appropriate that hero? The media appropriates that hero. There was, I hope I have the liberty to say this, because in Pakistan, you have very less liberty to say these things. But the nation building process in Pakistan, the state of Pakistan continued to pose Muhammad Ali Jinnah Sahab as a person who he wasn't. The state funeral of Muhammad Ali Jinnah was pursued in a way that his own religious identity, which we all know he was from the Shia sect, was completely ignored. And we always see how many of us go into a government office. I'm not a big fan of the Western utopia, but how many of us go into government offices and see the clothes which Muhammad Ali Jinnah used to very regularly wear? Now, this is a very small example. And what have we done? We have appropriated a hero, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who is the founder of the Pakistan. So we really need to assess the nation building process, how it is done. And then in the end, I would like to comment on the relationship between the structure and the individual. And this can very well translate into the politics of a country. And we can look at specific examples. So what is the relationship between the structure and the individual? And now that relationship is shaped in a way that it is bound to exclude people in the peripheries, people to the peripheries, be it Ahmadis. Again, what have we done to women in Pakistan? If you actually and I always quote this everywhere, and it is fascinating because it helps us analyze and assess the basis of the problem. Um, uh, do a drama analysis of sociological analysis of Dhoop Kinare and Humsafar, and you will understand the problem. So in Dhoop Kinare, you see the leading actress going on the streets of Karachi and Nazmabad and Gulistan-e-Johor, driving the car. It's a very progressive drama, and then there is a drama called Tanhaiya. It is actually based on the story of three women. It is fascinating, and one of the lead characters doesn't end up marrying the way it happens in our recent dramas. But what happens in now, pick any drama in Pakistan, any popular drama, be it Mere Paas Tum Ho or Hum Safar, and you will understand the problem. Why did this happen? Just concluding, why did this happen? Because we systematically oppressed the heroes of our country. that happened because of a political regime, that happened because of a conservative political regime which systematically oppressed. So, if I have to conclude, unfortunately, the difference and the whole hero building process, you can see the dichotomies through Pakistani cinema. That is the best way to see. And this is not true to Pakistan only. You see the same process in India. What is happening to the Indian cinema? There is resentment. There is this surge in extremist regimes. And that is precisely because of systematic oppression. I know that sociologists would come and argue that, there are things happening at the individual level also, very rightly so. But I would like to focus on how things are trickling down from structure. So in 2020, we stand with Mere Paas Tum Ho, and in 1980s and 1970s, we were with Tanhaiya and Dhoop Kinare. So Rahat Kazmi se Aaj Tak Ka Safar.
I really like the references to dramas. I don't really follow Pakistani dramas that much, but I did watch Humsafar. And I also want to give Fiza and Sadia a chance to add anything if they'd like to the subject, because to this prompt, because I feel like there is so much to say. So before we move on, is there anything else you would like to contribute? Like a final thought?
Oh, go on. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just a huge fan of Pakistani dramas. I have seen all the classics from Dhoop Kanare to all these recent day dramas. And I just love the analogy and the comparison that Ansel has drawn over here. And being a sociology student myself, this is exactly one of the papers that I'm working about right now on these days. And that is like we are trying to do the analysis of the dramas that are being shown on at the prime time on all the television channels. So like be it any private or even like the national television channels. And it just hurts your heart to see how the image of women have changed throughout these years. And it is not something that we are becoming conservative as a society, but this has again got a lot of things to do with our political regimes that have happened. So the time period that Anzal has been talking about, that was previous to the popular regime of Dr. General Ziaul Haq of 1980s, after which we just see the huge problem of like polarization, be it happening in terms of gender, be it happening in terms of religion, because before that you do not hear about things about like Shia Sunni problems that were going on. These two sects have been in the country for like since the creation, but like those were not that problematic. But now things are just not becoming like, it is 2020 and we see people, going into groups of thousands and like chanting slogans against the Shia Muslims and the Ahmadis. So not to go more into the debate of who is right or who is wrong, but just the fact that there is no tolerance for the fact that there could be somebody else whose religious beliefs and thoughts would not align well with you. There could be women who are just becoming progressive members of the society. There could be a woman who could be driving alone on the streets, and it can be 12 a.m. at night, and she should have the option of doing so. And she should not be, condemned for the action that, oh, why was she driving alone at night? Come on, it is 2020, guys. Like, the world is like, you just read upon things that people are doing. It is fascinating, and you are just talking about those things, and that is just like, the downward acceleration from what we have already been doing in Pakistan. So I guess just like talking about popular media and how they are projecting is something very important. It's a very important point, have more discussions about. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to add.
And Sadia, you unmuted.
Yeah. So I was just a small point I was thinking of whilst and they were talking. It's sort of like obviously the prime minister or the president of a country is like somebody, well, sometimes people look up to, maybe not the case in the UK, but and maybe not even in Pakistan in most parts. But I was just thinking back to an example of like, for example, Imran Khan. I know Ahmadis keep coming up, but I think obviously it's important because they are like, it's a massive thing in Pakistan in terms of differences. So I was just thinking of how Imran Khan had the opportunity and was actually thinking of like changing the declaration or something along those lines, but was influenced by like the Maulvis, for example, and the support that he needed from them, and he didn't change that because on that basis. And I just think that like presidents and prime ministers have such a platform to sort of be heroes or influence conversation, influencing, encouraging debate. And I just think it's such a shame that we don't even have politicians that we can sort of look up to in Pakistan that can sort of create that atmosphere for debate and talking and celebrating heroes that influence positive change. So I think that's a massive thing in Pakistan which needs to change, is just having politicians that we can genuinely look up to and actually influence that sort of atmosphere that makes people comfortable enough to be heroes in that country.
Yeah, I think so. I think what you might have been referring to regarding Ahmadis is Pakistan's parliament declaring them non-Muslim in a declaration in 1974. Okay, and wow, you guys, so we do need to, Anzal, you raise your hand. Did you want to say something on this prompt before we moved on?
Yeah, just one small point, and that is about, again, if you just talk about cinema, not many stories are made on how local communities live. And just to re-emphasize, in Lahore, if you just look at the locality of Lahore, old Lahore, if you see that there is Data Darbar, just a few kilometers away there is Badshahi Masjid, and just right beside Badshahi Masjid there is a Gurdwara, and just right beside Data Darbar there is Karbala Gamisha, which is a Shia Imam Barga. And if you go over there in the local community, just take out popular media, and you will realize that there is not much polarization. There is polarization in other sections of society, as Hadia mentioned. But again, it's how you appropriate things and how you present them to people. I won't take a lot of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my God, you guys, I feel like we can dedicate a whole other panel to societal representation and dramas, because we got pretty deep into that as well. So idea for a next topic, but moving on. So heroes, they inspire young people, and young people base their ambitions and imaginations and like an idea of new possibilities based on the heroes that they look up to. So do you feel like you have enough Pakistani heroes to look up to, or do you usually have to look externally outside of Pakistan to find these heroes and these role models? And is there an unsung hero in your life that you would like to highlight? Anyone can
I
go
was going to
first.
be really cheeky and say like Momin Saqib or like Atif Aslam, but I'll be super serious, and I will probably choose Asma Jahangir. Obviously, she's like very renowned Pakistani human rights lawyer, and obviously look up to that given my background in like educational background. And she was a social activist as well, who co-founded and chaired the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan. So I just feel like obviously there is a lack of women in Pakistan that can be heroes, but I think there's just a lack of understanding or like representation in terms of like actually publicizing their achievements. I'm sure there's many of them out there, but they're just not talked about enough or even celebrated for what it's worth. So yeah, I'd say Asma Jahangir, but I think there definitely needs to be more of an opportunity for these women who are so empowering and so inspiring to come out and really have a platform to put their sort of achievements on show, which isn't really like the culture, I guess, in the country. There's a lot of just like showcasing men and their achievements.
That is true. You're right. I think Asma Jahangir was one of the very few women heroes who I actually knew of, and she did become a pretty prominent name at some point before she passed away, and she's still remembered. And who would like to go next?
Okay, so talking about whether I had any heroes while growing up, so I would say on a macro scale, maybe no, especially from the contemporary contemporary times. Um, Otherwise, like I knew like there were my older siblings, my elder cousins who were always there to, help or support me or guide me about things I would want to do in my life. But apart from that, I just feel like there's a general lack of the concept of mentorship and mentorship in Pakistan, which is something I think is something that schools need to, play more focus upon, and like talk about those things, and like making it easier for students to, think about in those ways and like start tracking up their life on those ways. And apart from that, anything that has actually served as an inspiration for me while growing up was I would just find some refuge in the poetry
I'm
of
just trying to
Iqbal.
work out how to join with audio. Oh,
Okay.
Sorry? Okay.
Okay. So yeah, so for me it was just the poetry of Iqbal that I think I grew up reading to, thanks to that Shikwa and Jawabe Shikwa in O levels that finally introduced me. So okay, so there is someone that, like we all, of course we used to have the public holiday on November 9th, and that was pretty much my understanding of Iqbal. Okay, so he gave up the idea of Pakistan, but I guess, just like after that point when I was introduced with his poetry, and that was few things that I just started thinking about, and I guess those were the things that really helped me, find things about, talking about the purpose of life or what you really want to do. But apart from that, I really feel it might have been ignorance on my end to, think about other people, but I just felt like that there was not enough projection on the media. So I guess it was both a personal issue as well, but of course something that I felt that I wasn't getting all that information, so I guess there was some asymmetric information from the supply side as well. So that wasn't just me, but I just felt that apart from the fact that all those people who were surrounded, I was surrounded with, but apart from that, I don't remember anybody, really looking up to and thinking, oh, I would want to be like them someday.
No, I mean, it is kind of sad. I feel like there's one, so just Anzal, I do want, I'm going to give you a chance to answer this question as well, but just top of mind, and this might sound a little silly, but I I love following superheroes. I'm a big superhero nerd when it comes to reading their comic books or watching their shows. And like not like day-to-day superheroes, but like the superpower type. So when the Kamala Khan I started reading the Miss Marvel Kamala Khan books, and it made me so happy because even though I'm obviously like she's a teenager, I'm significantly older than her, than the character, but it's just nice seeing that there's a character who's Pakistani, who I can relate to, who's being showcased on such a prominent platform. And she's a Marvel superhero, and I think at some point she's also going to join the Avengers clan. And there is also a Disney there's a Disney series coming out, and I think a Pakistani girl in Canada is going to play the main role. So I guess that's just like one example of how excited I get when like once in a blue moon there's a Pakistani girl who's being represented as a hero, or not just a girl, but like any Pakistani. Okay, and Anzal?
Sure. So I have a lot of positivity to add in this, and I will connect back to the first point I made, and that is, unfortunately, the problem in Pakistan is not that we don't produce heroes. We do produce heroes. There are heroes in every community. There is a hero in every gully or mohalla of Pakistan. Let's just start from a very small example. Sarfaraz Ahmed, emerging from a very, very small local hood of Karachi, going up and representing Pakistan at international cricket level. There are other people, Sana Mir, women cricketers in Pakistan, women sports people in Pakistan, journalists in Pakistan. But I think the problem with Pakistan is that, be it people who are on the left, people who are on the right, unfortunately, heroes in Pakistan are appropriated, and their stories are taken away in the wider context. So Faiz Saab was one of the greatest poets Pakistan has ever produced. However, Faiz Saab's legacy was later on appropriated by the left in Pakistan. I don't think that should have happened. Even if I am on the left in Pakistan, I don't think that should have happened. Faiz Sahab, I would actually give you one example, and this is, and why it shouldn't have happened, because it stops the process of local stories to come up. Now let's see, and even if someone likes Faiz Sahab ki ghazal, he or she would in Pakistan would say, and you have to respect that opinion, they would say, oh nahi, ye to ji wo surkho walo the, wo Lal Salam wale the. And it's not Faiz Saab's fault. It's Pakistan's popular media's fault. Let's take an example, a very local example. I don't know how many of you know him. He was a professor at Habib, one of the finest novelists Pakistan has ever produced, Dr. Asif Aslam Faruqi. He recently died in June. Not many people know him. He was a hero. He was a hero. The kind of work he has done in Pakistan's literature. There are so many people who we continue to celebrate in literature, who might be with us, who are not with us. You might have political differences with this person, but Shaukat Khanam is an heroic job. And this is again something which you need to do. You need to appreciate people while keeping your differences aside. Idi Saab did a heroic job. I mean, just give me one example in other countries. There might be examples, but people doing such amazing work. What happens in Karachi, and I personally believe this, and I think this is also a fact, that Karachi is run by local communities, and people like Abdul Sattar Idi, people like Chipa, people like JDW, and other different little organizations who are doing a tremendous job. Again, the Anwar Maqsood, how can we forget him? How can we forget Moin Akhtar? So, I mean, there are numerous people. How can we forget the living legend, Bushra Ansari? There's so many. Hasina Moin, who I was referring to in regards to different dramas. The problem again is that we have this tradition of appropriating the stories of our heroes, and we shouldn't do that. Our heroes are our heroes, despite their politics. You might have differences with them in their personal lives, with their political views. That is completely fine. But again, we come back to the similar point, that as a country we are so polarized. Not maybe not the people, but the discourse in media is so polarized, and especially in today's social media's wars, that we are just not ready to accept anyone. We're just not ready to respect anyone. And that will only come, again, it will come from the changes in the superstructure of Pakistan, but that will also come from the local level, when we will truly accept and adopt the democratic culture. And the first demand of democratic culture is, or the first premise of democratic culture is, that you respect people. I think that is where you start from. So that is what I would want to state.
That's a perfect segue into another topic that I want to bring up related to this subject, and that is the heroes that have been sidelined based on gender, religion, and motives. And all of you have, again, you've already touched on this already, but if you think about Malala Yousafzai, Dr. Abdus Salam, or even Sharmeen Obaid Chinoy, even though they have accomplished a lot, they are still criticized. People are still suspicious of them, and they're not given as much credit for the work that they've done. So in your opinion, how can we as Pakistanis build a better system of support and celebration for our fellow Pakistanis and peers and countrymen and women? Like, what role do you think the media, which has been coming up a lot in this discussion, can play, or any other institution can play, in creating a more unified narrative around these heroes?
I would probably start by saying, like encouraging a culture of research and criticalness, but in a positive way, because like if Pakistanis are one thing, it's critical, but it's not always in the best way. So I think if we do that and encourage a culture of research to understand differences, that's the only way we're going to really achieve that, as opposed to like highlighting differences, which is at the moment out of maybe ignorance or like lack of bother to research. And then sort of criticalness touches on the fact that you have obviously have to question your way of thinking or your mode of thinking, to sort of understand what other people also have to say. And I think with media, I think very much like this, it can encourage debate, so that we don't just dismiss other viewpoints, but actually listen and talk about and challenge in a good way. And obviously social media right now, like in COVID times, like Zoom is an amazing way to do that. But just talking to these celebrities or heroes who aren't even celebrities, on news channels and stuff like that, is just such a thing that I think is missed out of media in Pakistan, which would be a really good thing to sort of see going forward.
Okay, no, that's a really good point.
Okay, so just building upon what Sadia just said, when we talk about research and when we talk about what role can media play, I believe just being partial is something what media would be doing us the biggest favor. So if you are talking about any negative side or whatever criticism that might be coming to those people or to any point of view, do talk about the positive thing as well. What is the whole world celebrating about? Okay, there could be a certain section that are being critical about anything, and that happens everywhere. So I would just say not just in Pakistan. In Pakistan, the problem is this, that only the negatives are being propagated instead of talking about what is the positive side as well. So I guess just like bringing up a balance between both sides, and then giving people the choice of choosing whichever side they want to pick upon. At least provide them with enough information, because this is the part that media is supposed to play. Give impartial, just give right information, give equal information, represent both sides of the coin, and then let people choose and decide whatever they want to pick upon. But just telling people about all those stories that are just a thought of what might be going on in somebody's mind, that oh, somebody is getting all the projection because it is some Yehudi sazish or something of that sort. Come on, that's not fair. You have to do your job with responsibility. This is the least amount of favor, like the least on you're just being least honest with your job if you're just providing both sides of the coin. So I guess that is something that is, even if they just do up that part, that is okay. That's it. Let people give people at least some choice to pick and choose.
So it sounds.
Your mic is on mute.
Now?
It's fine.
Now it's fine. Yeah, because my AirPods just died, so I had to take them off. So sorry for the lag there, but Fiza and Sadia, it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're both, in terms of media representation, you're both almost saying similar things in terms of how the media should also play a positive role in talking about and reporting on our heroes, instead of peddling unproven conspiracy theories, or even just speculations that don't really have much basis. So those are, yes, those are good points. And Anzal?
Yeah, thank you. I think points very well made by Fiza, Sadia. Um, One thing I think I believe that it is not, of course, media is just one partner or one particular stakeholder. You know what? There is this very complex dialectical relationship between the structure and the individual, the media and the audience, the education system and the students, the state and the citizens. So it's a two-way process in all the things I mentioned. It's not that if the state improves its narrative towards women, towards Ahmadis, towards Shias, towards the other religious minorities, things will get better. Maybe things will get better to an extent, but again, you need to that needs to translate at a local level. That needs to translate at an individual level. For that, a lot of things need to change. First, we need to identify all the main stakeholders. Now, of course, the people of Pakistan, a stakeholder, the institution of religion is a stakeholder. And we cannot exclude this institution and progress. There needs to be change in this particular institution only, because it is very, very, religious values are locally entrenched. You cannot go and say to people, okay, forget it and let's move ahead. They won't. You need to bring reforms in this process. Then there is education. Education institutes are a stakeholder. What have you been producing? Let's sit down and assess. What is a curriculum? Let's sit down and discuss. And it will ultimately have a long-term impact on all of these things. What is our media doing? What type of anchors are we producing? Everything, cinema we are producing, the literature we are producing. So it is a process which is a long-term process. We can do our individual bits, in whatever capacity we are. We need to promote a culture of respect, a culture of mutual admiration. We can continue working to promote people like Abdul Salam, Dr. Abdul Salam. We can continue to promote people who have been marginalized, Malala and others. But the good thing about Malala is that Malala, on the other hand, has been also supported by the mainstream political leaders of Pakistan. Yes, there has been resentment, but she has also been supported. The current prime minister, even the people in opposition, they have supported Malala. So, there's room for improvement. But what we need to do is we can individually do our part, by doing the right thing, which is giving respect to people, by highlighting local communities. Again, we are forgetting that. We need to emphasize on that. And on the other hand, by giving voice to them. And on the other hand, continue to propagate this narrative that it is a collective job. It is a job, a nation building. Again, you need to reconstruct the process. You cannot, examples of extreme examples where people who have been tainted with, um, with with uh, with allegations of corruption, harassment, they are celebrated in Pakistan, and it is a worrying sign. Will that change suddenly? No, it won't. Will it get more complicated in the future? Yes, it will. But will it not change ever? No, I don't think so. I think there are a lot of good things happening in Pakistan. There are people like Fiza, Sadia, you yourself representing this country at different platforms, and we continue to rebuild the process, rebuild the country. It will take time to get over with the extremist military regimes and the extremist ideology at every level. But I think we should and this is another thing which I want to add, that we should trust our local intelligentsia. We should trust local culture. ऐसी बात नहीं है, that we won't respect our heroes. There are people who respect Dr. Abdul Salam. There are people who respect leaders who have been, who have been completely oppressed by the state and by the media. There are media people, there are media personnel who are continue to be celebrated in peripheries. We just need to give them the voice, and we need to trust our own conscience. We don't need to follow any other country. Again, I am a firm believer. We don't need our left, our progressive movement should be very well oriented to the context of Pakistan. That is very important. And I think if we start doing that, we have started to do that in different fragments, we'll be able to bring some positive change. The good news is that we are already doing that in our different capacities. And let's just continue to hope. इकबाल की ज़बान में उम्मीद सहर रख, आप पेवस्ता रहे शजर से, तो बस आप उम्मीद रखें and continue to send a positive message from all platforms and also critically highlight what is going wrong.
Thank you for the hopeful note in the end. I know that there were some negative things we had to discuss here as well, but I think that we had a very insightful and solution-oriented discussion. And we are at the hour now, but there is a question I would like to pose to the speakers, which is not from me, it's actually from one of our attendees. And it does tie into the concept of which platforms could celebrate Pakistan's unsung heroes, which ones are doing it already, and which ones can do better. I think the general consensus in this conversation is that the media can do better. But a question that somebody asked the panel was, are there any platforms or organizations that highlight unsung heroes in Pakistan, similar to how some other countries have events to celebrate them? And is it okay if we go over 5 minutes just to answer this question? Okay.
So to take a first shot at the question, I'm not really sure about what other platforms or organizations can be doing, but I know that this year LUM's graduation ceremony had Malala Yousafzai as the speaker. So I guess that is, I believe, one of the great steps. So, like, all the students who are just graduating and then they are being addressed by someone, who has won the Nobel Prize for the country. So I guess that is an absolute delight to see. And then we were just talking about how heroes are not being celebrated. So I guess just the fact that she was the keynote speaker for the graduation ceremony for LAMS, I just find it to be absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, in a similar vein, there's obviously, I think there's some platforms that don't explicitly showcase heroes, but implicitly they are there and are being showcased. So, for example, with the Harvard Pakistan Forum, I'm not sure if you guys have been keeping up with it, but they had like a whole symposium actually on like different trends in Pakistan, like economy, like COVID and education and stuff like that. And the speakers that they actually chose were specifically those who have excelled in those areas. So like professors who are renowned, people who work in like business and the economy who are very, very good at what they do. So it's people obviously that we've never heard of before, I think, but definitely deserve to be heard. And I think those sorts of intellectual discussions are where these heroes really do come out. It's a shame they're not like televised on TV or like on AOI News or something, but yeah, it's definitely out there, but you just sort of have to search for it, I guess.
I think we all have done a fair job to highlight different platforms. You will definitely find a lot of platforms. But I would encourage you to build your own platform. I mean, that is what we need to continue to do. And again, those platforms can be, there are different education institutes. You just named one, LUMS. Habib is doing a good job in terms of recognizing people. There are institutions which are not recognized at all. They're doing an excellent job. There are different literature forums. They're doing a phenomenal job. There are other independent activists in Pakistan who are doing a very good job. There are people in the political arena who are doing a good job in highlighting them. But again, this process will only be successful if you continue to engage in it. There is a need for an informed debate and discussion on social media. I don't think social media's discourse is positive or constructive at all. It's just a place, a platform where people are more than willing to, I don't know if they're bored or what, they just come and they just spread misinformation. That is not the platform. We need to do constructive engagement over there also. A lot of work needs to be done, but it needs to be done at all levels. Media, education, of course, the political arena, in cinema, in sports, and there are some positive developments on every forum, honestly. There has been, once again, there has been a movement in Pakistan, which is recognizing its female sports community members. Just a very small example. I've seen the change in the recent first class cricket broadcast. It includes female commentators now. PSL included female commentators. So things are happening slowly, gradually. We need to continue to do work. So build your own platform, and we'll support you. That is my message.
That's awesome, guys. And so now we are a little over 5 minutes, but there's one question we got that I do think is important to address before we wrap up here. I think it's a clarification point. So one of our attendees said that, and Sadia has also taken a stab at answering this as well. I saw, thank you for that. It seems like many examples being given here are those of people who are well-known workers and artists. And I feel like the unsung heroes would be those who are working day and night and helping their communities in different ways through their skills and hard work. So I think I want to ask, what is your definition of an unsung hero?
Can I take this question?
Anyone can take it.
Yeah. So I think one, just to re-emphasize the point, I don't know if you missed this point, but we all are in agreement on one thing, that we have been failing, consistently failing to give voice to local communities. And you are definitely right. Those are the unsung heroes, and we have not been able to recognize them. We have not been able to give them voice. And this is precisely why I maintain on the point. I personally believe that there is a hero in every gully or mohalla. There is this who have been serving on different levels and different platforms. Appreciation for those heroes will only come when we continue to deconstruct our conception of hero, continue to give voice to the local communities. And this is something which needs to be done across the board. You cannot say if I'm related to, and I think because of course I don't have a lot of work experience, I am very much related to the education sector. I have to start criticizing people who are in my business right now in academia. They are teaching theory, very good. Now go into the rural communities, go into the local communities and ask them, and understand your theories through them. That is important. Same is for the media, same is for the cinema. And that is only when you will be able to recognize unsung heroes. And I completely agree. Those are the heroes. Those are the unsung heroes, but they just don't get the voice.
Yeah, I think building on that, I think technically anybody can be molded into an unsung hero, obviously for the good reasons. But for me, I think an unsung hero can exist in two capacities. The first being somebody who's celebrated and sort of known in mainstream media or discourse in society, but also on the flip side, it can be people that are celebrated but perhaps unknown. So that's sort of what the person who asked the question was getting at, I think. So people in local communities, in our families, who work day in, day out and do things that are very much needed in our societies, like manual labor or like people who just help out on the day-to-day basis. So yeah, I think it can definitely be molded into anything, but those would be the two sort of general, I guess, categories I'd put them in.
I guess Ansar and Sadia has actually done a great job in defining who could be the unsung heroes. I would just like to add a little point over here. For me, any unsung hero would be someone whose work is not being appreciated, whose work is not being recognized. And more difficult part would be when the work is not being supported. So, because for it is not possible for one person to, do everything themselves. A little amount of support, be it, moral support or just like some appreciation or just like, helping people disseminate their good work is something which all of us should be taking part in. But I just feel like at times we know like somebody that Anzal just took a name of who was from Habib University. I'm sorry, I don't know of him. And I guess that's the whole part that we are all missing upon. Like we are not disseminating the great work that is being done in our surroundings. So I guess that I believe is the, all of them, those are the unsung heroes for us.
Yes, and I think those are great answers, and I would love to continue this discussion because there's so much to say, but I know that we are out of time, and I'm sure you have to carry on with your day. I think, Anzal, it's pretty late for you in Pakistan. So let's wrap up here, but just to
It's
quickly
11
sum
p.m.
up. Sorry? Yeah, so you can
It's
go
11
sleep
p.m.
soon. But thank you so much, Fiza, Anzal, Sadia, for being here. And I just want to do a quick recap of, I think, what we have pretty much covered here is that I think one reason a lot of unsung heroes aren't celebrated is because the lack of tolerance for diversity, and also because of how the media is portraying these unsung heroes. And I think you were trying to say that the media is not giving them the attention and recognition they deserve. And because of that, people in Pakistan aren't either. So are we agreed here? Okay. So I just wanted to make that final note so that our attendees have some final thoughts to walk away with. And now I hope you had I hope you enjoyed the panel, and I hope you felt like you had a safe space to discuss your opinions and your views. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, attendees, for being here today and tuning in as well. And I guess we are done now.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
Thank you, Anna.
It
Is there
was a
anything
lovely
else?
discussion. Thank you, Sadia,
Thank you.
Faiza. Thank you, Newzan.
Thank you.
Adab.
Allah Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.